with their legislative committee and their oil and gas committee. She is chair of their watercraft committee and chair of their orientation committee. So she's a very busy and very active lady. In fact, this year she was selected by her peers to be the Assessor of the Year. She is here to talk to us today about Constitutional Amendment number 5 that will be on the November 8th ballot. Welcome, Ms. Wendy Thibodaux.
Thank you all for having me today. My name is Wendy Thibodaux. I'm the Lafourche Parish Assessor. I have been in the Assessor's office or the Assessor world for 25.5 years, and I've been Assessor for the last 8. When I became Assessor, one of the things I encouraged my parish in Lafourche to do was, in order to be more competitive with the surrounding parishes, was to lower our millage rates. So in 2015, I put together a presentation and went to all of my 54 taxing districts and encouraged them to lower their millage rates in order to be more competitive. Well, I'm proud to say that out of the 54 taxing districts that have millages, only 10 of them rolled their millages forward. The other 44 of them actually lowered their millage rate and reduced their millage rates to help taxpayers in business and industry to have a lower tax bill. So at that time, I was, had the big W, and I was very proud of myself and thought it was over. Only to my surprise, in 2019, all 44 taxing districts that didn't roll their millages forward or levy the maximum rate was forced to levy that higher rate, the maximum rate, because the Constitution dictates that they must levy the maximum millage rate at least once in a 4-year cycle, or else they lose the ability to levy that rate ever again. So, for example, I often use my office as an example to give people an idea, because this millage process is very, very complex and very hard to understand. I've been doing it for 25 years and I still get confused. So I often use this example. So in reassessment, in the 2016 reassessment, the assessor's responsibility in the Constitution, it dictates that all assessors have to take all of the property within their boundaries and they have to reassess it or make the property up to market value. They have to, and typically that is an increase. So there's typically an increase in value in property. Well, the Constitution also dictates that a taxing district cannot collect 1 penny more in the next year, which would be 2016, the reassessment in 2016, they cannot collect 1 penny more in that year than they did the year prior because of that reassessment. So the only way to do that, if you have a higher property tax value and you have to get the same amount of revenue generated, the only way to do that in a calculation is to adjust the rate. And the only way to do that is to adjust the rate downward. So as the assessor, we reassess all of the property. We send our values to the legislative auditor. The legislative auditor adjusts the rate so that we get the same amount of money in that year, typically goes down. And then the districts, the Constitution, and what Constitutional Amendment number 5 is addressing is that the Constitution says that if a taxing district doesn't levy that maximum rate again, what was just adjusted, if they don't levy that higher rate before the next reassessment, they lose that adjustment in millage rate. So for instance, my office, my maximum millage rate is 2.5. In the 2016 reassessment process, my millage rate was adjusted downward to 2.0 mills. If I didn't levy the 2.5 mills before the 2020 reassessment year, I would have lost that 0.5 adjustment, because the Constitution dictates that if you don't use it, you lose it. So what I found happens is that a lot of these taxing districts, they will levy that maximum rate, even if it's not budgetarily necessary, just so that they don't have to go back to the voters and ask the voters for that 0.5 mills again. So what happened to me in 2019, I didn't budgetarily need that 0.5 mills. But I had to overtax my people in Lafourche Parish so that I didn't have to go back to the legislature and ask them for that 0.5 ever again. So what happens is that either they use it or they levy in that higher rate, or they lose it and they lose it forever unless they go back and ask the legislature or taxpayers for that rate again. I understand, someone told me a story that here in Baton Rouge, the Central School District, that actually happened to them. They had a millage rate, a constitutional 5 mills to run their school district. They saw an increase in revenue and in a taxable value. So being fiscally responsible, they rolled their millage rate back. They didn't roll it forward. Well, they didn't roll it forward before the next reassessment period, so they lost the ability to ever levy what they lost, that difference in millage rate. So what's happening is either the taxing districts are levying the maximum rate when it's not budgetarily necessary, or they're being punished for being fiscally responsible. So what Constitutional Amendment number 5, this bothered me tremendously because I didn't want to overtax my people. So in 2019, if anybody knows me, I don't take too kindly to overtaxing people. So I went to one of my senators and asked him to help me in fixing this issue with the Constitution. So in 2019, we started drawing up a bill. Well, everybody knows in 2020, the session, COVID hit, so they were only allowed 5 bills. So I told my senator, this really doesn't go into play until the 2024 reassessment, so we held it off, and then it went through in the 2021 session. I am proud to say that out of the 3 committees and the 2 floor votes, I only had 1 legislator vote against this out of all 5 votes. So I only had 1 legislator in the House vote against it. What this constitutional amendment does is that it will remove that mandate. It removes the verbiage in the Constitution that says you must levy that maximum rate before the next reassessment or you lose it. It is not taking the ability away from these districts that if they need a new fire truck or if a hurricane hits and they need that money to replace something and run their districts like they are supposed to, they still have the ability to go back and do the exact same procedure that's in place right now. And nothing was changed with that. They still have to let the public know. They still have to advertise in the paper. They still have to follow the same exact rules if they want to roll up to that maximum rate. It's just not making them roll up to that maximum rate if they don't want to. So constitutional amendment number 5 only removes the mandate. It doesn't remove the ability for these taxing districts to levy the money, the revenue or the millage that they need. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So each district has already a set amount for millage, and that's awarded by the legislature, correct?
Some of them some of them are through the legislature, like they have levy districts, school boards, police. Some of them have legislative millage rates. The majority of the millage rates are voted on by the people. So the people decide how much that rate is. It's just that the Constitution is basically dictating the taxing districts on when to levy that maximum rate, even if they don't need it. So like a vote for Constitutional Amendment number 5 will remove the mandate. A vote no will keep it in place to where that maximum millage rate must be levied once every 4 years. And what happens in that 4-year cycle is that if you have a business or you're in industry, those are the people that are paying the majority of that roll forward because there are no exemptions or so forth that protect them from that. So if you own a business in more than one parish, so the example I use in Lafourche, we have 54 taxing districts. In Terrebonne Parish, my neighboring parish, they have 50. So that's 104 taxing districts that business and industry is paying the majority of that roll forward, 104 different times. So one thing that Louisiana is spearheading, and what we've realized here in Louisiana is that we need to reform taxes and our tax base. And this, in my opinion, is one way that we can incentivize business to come here just by fixing the Constitution because it makes taxing districts more accountable on what they're doing with our money. And it also gives them the flexibility to be able to be budgetarily responsible, that we don't have to overtax people because the government is telling us to.
So if I understand correctly, so say, a fire district is awarded by the voters 5 mills, but in a year, there's a lot of revenue, they roll it back to 2.5, but they don't, raise it before that 4-year reassessment, so they can never go past the 2.5 again unless they put it to the legislature or the voters.
Or the vote of the people, that is true. And so what happens in fear that because they don't know what the future holds, a hurricane or something of that nature, so what they do is they rather be safe than sorry, and they'll levy the 5 mills and just hold on to that money, and it's sitting in a savings account where these districts have these enormous surpluses, instead of putting it back into business so they can reinvest it in their business and stay open. I'd rather it be in business and industry to keep people having their jobs and running business than sitting in a governmental savings account just in case something happens. Yes, sir.
Can you explain to me where this provision came from in the Constitution?
Okay.
Because I tried to look it up and the sites kind of confused me, like all this does.
Yes, and it's my understanding, now I wasn't there, but in 1974 with the Constitutional Convention, it's my understanding that this was put in at the 11th hour on the floor. I don't know whether it was the Senate floor or the House floor. Nobody will admit to that, but they're saying that this whole reassessment and rolling forward was put in as an amendment at the 11th hour. That's the most information I got on that.
But the specific thing about having to levy it at least once in an assessment, do we know where that came from?
No. And everybody is very tight-lipped about it. No, I don't know where it came from. And look, I wasn't there in 1974. I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. It's just that we're in 2022 now. Whatever that reason was, it doesn't hold true today. So instead of worrying, my idea and the way I operate is let's move forward, let's fix it, let's figure out what's wrong, and let's move it forward. Because we need to be more competitive with the surrounding states. And I just believe that we often look to incentivize business to come here by exempting it and giving the money away, when this is one simple way we can fix it and incentivize business to come here so that we seem and we come across as being more fiscally responsible with their money. Yes, ma'am.
Can you kind of explain the argument of why people would not want to vote for this? Has there been a lot of opposition to this amendment?
There was, PAR had put out their recommendations, and what I don't understand is that a lot of focus has been put on the timing of rolling forward. And the districts can roll forward in year 1. They can roll forward in 2, 3, 4, 5, the length of their millage. They can do that now. I'm not changing that. What I'm changing is the mandate. It's not a timing issue. It's a mandate issue. So that if Constitutional Amendment number 5 passes, is that it does not obligate a taxing district to ever roll forward if they never need it. They don't have that option right now if they don't want to lose their millage rate. Right? What this will do is actually remove that. And it's not a timing issue, it's more of a mandate issue, that the government is actually dictating to taxing districts how to tax people, not knowing their budgets, which I don't understand. Yes, sir.
For those of us less familiar, can you give us a kind of step-by-step who and how is the rate determined every year?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of it. Step by step.
And how is the rate determined every year?
Okay, so it's
Step by step.
okay. So the first way it starts is if you have a district that wants to levy a millage rate, they have to go through bonding attorneys and so forth and get like the procedural, what they have to do. One of the first step is that they have to go to the voters. They have to determine how much money they need for their budget to run the district. And then whatever that millage rate is, it differs from parish to parish because every taxable value is different in every parish. So they figure out what that rate is. A millage rate is merely a numeric representation of the money needed for a district to run its governmental services. That's all a millage rate is. So they go to the people, the district will go to the people in a vote, and the people that will pay that tax will determine if they agree with paying that millage rate to that district in order to provide governmental services that they say. Every year, so what happens is once it's approved, if it's approved by the voters, then it'll go into place. Every year, that taxing district has to go at their public hearing and say and state in a formal writing, there's certain documents by the legislative auditor that dictates what we do, and they will say, this is the millage rate that I want to levy. Is anybody here? It differs from single member boards to like a school board that has 9 members to it and so forth, but they all have to vote on what millage rate they are levying. None of that process is changing. That process will still hold true whenever and if ever they decide to roll forward. That was not changed at all. So that happens every year. If a district decides that they want to roll forward and they levy the highest rate, they have a whole different set of rules that they have to advertise and let the public know. That is not changing. If they decide to lower the lower rate, then there's a different set of rules for that. That all comes from the legislative auditor. And that does vary and change from year to year. The legislative auditor puts out, classes and videos and so forth on the changes made either by them or by the legislature.
But who makes the final vote?
Who makes the final vote? You mean from year to year?
Final vote on what it will
It's the board.
be, each of the boards.
Each board. And the people have a right to go to those meetings and voice their opinion if they feel like they shouldn't levy those maximum rates or the higher rate or the lower rate, whatever they're doing. The public, that's why there's so much advertising when they rolling forward, is to let the public know that they have a right to go and have their voices be heard and their statements be heard. I know in Lafourche, it's a lot in the school board. They have a lot of people show up for that one. You had a question? Yes, sir. Yes, go.
Again, for those of us who are slower, I knew that there was a constitutional millage. I didn't realize that the constitutional millage, I thought it was set at 5%. The constitutional millage is subject to the mandate too?
Yes. I am a constitutional millage, and I would have, if I wouldn't have levied the 2.5 mills in 2019, my maximum rate would have then been adjusted to 2.0. That would have been my maximum rate from now on. And the only way to get that back, if I needed it, because Hurricane Ida devastated my parish, and I needed to replace computers and so forth. If I would have needed that 0.5 in order to do that, I would have had to go back to the legislature and ask them for that 0.5 back, which is not easy. Yes, sir.
So should this pass, you would be able to roll forward at any point in between the assessment periods, is that right?
You can do that now.
Okay.
I can roll forward at any point. Some districts roll forward in the first year, and they levy that maximum rate the whole time. This will allow them to not do that if it's not budgetarily necessary. You can roll forward at any year. I can roll up one year, roll down the next year, roll up the next year. It doesn't matter. None of that is changing. All that is being removed is the actual verbiage that mandates that they have to levy that maximum rate or they lose it. This way, it's kind of like, the way I explain it to a lot of my taxing districts is that it's kind of like a savings account. You have the ability to levy that 2.5 if there's a hurricane or if you need something. But if you never need it, you never have to use it, which makes us more fiscally responsible as a taxing body. Yes, ma'am.
So this would in essence do away with any savings that, say, a concerns like the fire department?
So it won't,
There would be no savings or nest egg
Yeah, they can save it. It's just that what I'm finding is that when these districts, they are mandated to levy that maximum rate and they don't need it, it goes into these surpluses. And you can see around the state that they have some taxing districts that have millions upon millions of dollars in these surpluses. And what I'm hoping is that this is the first step to making taxing districts more accountable with the public's money, is that it won't be sitting in a surplus or a savings account, that it will be, they will not levy that maximum rate and allow these businesses and industry to keep their money and reinvest it in their business to stay open. Because why this was so important to me in Lafourche is that we're heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. And what I saw was that I have these taxing districts with huge surpluses, but then I had my business and industry that were not making it. And it's always been my belief is that I'd rather collect a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing. And if we put them out of business, it doesn't do me a bit of good if a fire district has $5 million sitting in surplus if my business that we get the money from is bankrupt. I never get to collect from them again. So it's just a way to be, in my opinion, more transparent as a taxing district, and that hopefully this will make these taxing districts more accountable, and that business and industry will see that. I have been targeting economic development and business and industry because that is where I'm hoping this improves, and those are the people that pay the bulk of this roll forward process.
Okay, so a constitutional millage is rolled back by mandate. Can you go to the legislature and get it fixed? With an ordinary millage, say for a fire protection district, you have to go back to the voters.
Yes, sir.
It requires another election. With a constitutional millage, can you go to the legislature and adjust that number?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
you can. It's just it's a very unstable
It's a
process.
yes.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Are those dollars that are just sitting there that are unused that you discussed, what happens to those dollars?
Well, in my office, when oil and gas was doing well, I didn't even have to roll up my millage rate, and I still got an increase because that tax base grew so much. So I had it in surplus. One thing that I did, because I believe as a leader, I lead by example. You know, my grandmother always said, you know, don't do as I say, don't do as I do, or some, you know. So what I do as a leader is in 2021, when Ida hit Lafourche Parish and devastated everyone, I did not levy a millage rate. I ran my office off of my surplus. So the money that I had it was in my surplus from the increase in oil and gas when a barrel of oil was $120 a barrel, my parish benefits from that. It was sitting in a savings account. And what I did is in 2021, when Ida hit, I did not tax my people to help them so that they could take that money and help to rebuild their homes. And what I did is take my surplus, and I am running my office and my district off of my surplus. So it's not, some of them abuse it. I'm not saying they don't, but what I'm hoping is that, because when I would go to my taxing districts, I'm like, okay, you have a surplus, don't tax the people. They would say, oh, well, I have to roll it forward and levy the maximum rate or I'm going to lose it. This will remove that argument. Yes, sir.
I'm totally confused. You just said you had the power to do that, but 5 minutes ago you said each board has the power.
I am my own board. I'm only one person on my board. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you.
Is that very common?
The sheriff is by himself, I am by myself, but all of the other ones, I think we're the only two that we are the single board members.
So you have the total power to do whatever you desire.
Yes, but I mean, the public I still have to conduct an open meeting to where the public comes in and look, they come in. I encourage my people to ask me questions because I am human and I'm not perfect. And if there is something that I can adjust, I try to be as fiscally responsible with other people's money as possible. And if they come in, and I encourage my public to do that for everybody. And so when the board comes in, I mean, I hope that I am proving that, because last year I voted, I held my open meeting in my office and nobody showed up, and I levied 0 mills. Like, I did not collect a penny at all last year. So I'm hoping that by example it'll lead other districts to be more fiscally responsible with their revenue, with other people's money. Yes, ma'am.
But they are accountable, right? This is public money. I mean,
The legislative auditor, you have to do, yes, you have audits every year. You do. Every year, if you collect public money, I think it's over 50,000, you have to have an audit. So I get audited every year. Yes, sir.
This is not related to the mechanics of it, but in the talk you said that I thought you said you only had 5 votes against the bill on each floor or in committee?
It went through 3 committees because it's a constitutional amendment, and it went to 2 floor votes. I only had 1 legislator out of all of that. Like, the House floor vote is the only one that I had 1 person vote against it. Everybody else, it was unanimous. Nobody voted against it. And what helped me a lot with that was legislators that actually sat on local boards that were like, okay, well, they always told me I had to levy the maximum rate and I had to roll forward, and when I asked why, they said, you just have to, or else we'll lose it. And so this kind of made sense onto why. Yes, sir.
A follow-up on that. You mentioned the fact that you had the total authority in your parish. When you were testifying in committee in the legislature, were there eyebrows raised at all about that?
About me being the single board, that never came. The way the boards are developed or made up, that didn't come up in committee, you know. So.
Wendy, they've got it mixed up. They think you have the authority for all the food.
Oh, no. I only have authority for the assessment district. I'm sorry. I thought you meant I don't have the authority over the whole parish. My school board, just like it's set up like that in every parish. I have 54 taxing districts. I have 54 different boards. The only 2 board out of the 54 is the assessor and the sheriff, that we only have 1 person on that board. All of the other boards have like more than 1 member. Like my school board has, I have 15 members on my school board. So all 15 members have to agree on what rate they are levying. The recreation districts, the levy districts, the parish council, like all of those have more than 1 member. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. I have the authority over my assessment district. That's when I was referring to me voting, it was just for the money for my office, my assessment district, because I collect the millage. Not everybody. All of the other 53 districts levied millage last year. I was the only one that didn't. So they paid property taxes. Don't think that Lafourche don't put that out there. My people will be like, I paid a bill. No, everybody else levied a millage. I'm saying that my office, the assessor's office in Lafourche Parish, had a surplus, and I chose not to tax the people to run my office. All of the other 54 districts, believe me, they levied a millage. I was the only one that didn't, because I'm trying to lead by example, and I was hoping that some other districts didn't levy a millage, but that didn't fall through. Yes, sir.
If this passes, is there a chance that this use it or lose it mandate might creep in elsewhere at some level? Or is it gone?
I'm hoping it's gone for good. If I understood why it was put in place back in 1974, I think I would have a better answer for you. It's just that I don't understand why. It doesn't make sense to me now, but they may have had a good reason back in 1974. But whatever that is, nobody could give me a reason why it's good today.
The reason I ask is that some people really feel that way. Use it or lose it.
Yes, and it may have been prevalent back in 1974. I just don't think, I think now with technology and transparency, and I really do believe, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years, and just the public and the younger generation being more knowledgeable about what's going on, I just don't think that that is the way or the policy to have in place. It's more of a, you know, I prefer to be transparent and be accountable for what I'm doing, because it's not my money. It's their money, and I'd rather be as transparent as possible and be as fiscally responsible, because you earn the trust, and that is when we grow as, you know, an area or a parish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick reminder, board, we have a board meeting next Monday, so come a little early for that board meeting. Thank you, guys. Oh, and we have a Senate panel, right, next week for the U.S. Senate.